The Council of Galaxies had convened above Valor Prime, a luminous world whose silver-ringed orbit had long been regarded as neutral ground. It was a planet whose beauty belied its history, a history of negotiation, of diplomacy, and of decisions that had shaped the fate of thousands of civilizations. Today, it would host a summit that, in the minds of most counselors, would be routine. A single human ship had been summoned to answer for a minor skirmish at the edge of the Orion Rift, a skirmish they assumed trivial, a species they had catalogued for centuries as unpredictable, occasionally irritating, but ultimately insignificant. The plenary chamber stretched across a kilometer of orbiting space station, a vast arc of transparent material and alloy that offered a panoramic view of the planet's rings below and the glittering cosmos beyond. Thousands of council representatives filled the room. The Andari, crystalline and radiant, refracted the chamber's soft lighting, their multiple limbs moving with meticulous precision as they consulted data tablets and whispered amongst themselves. The Vortali, massive and scaled, dominated entire sections of the chamber, their eyes glowing in various shades of red and gold. The Sarkin hissed and undulated, ever calculating, ever impatient. And the countless minor species, each proud of their intellect and history, whispered, laughed quietly, or tapped their claws and fingers nervously against consoles. The council had convened for centuries, discussing matters of war, commerce, colonization, and law. Yet today's gathering felt different. There was an air of amusement, a hint of arrogance. For even as they debated the minor conflict with humans, not one representative believed they were in danger. Councillor Threx of the Vorhali leaned forward, massive claws drumming against his seat. "They send one ship," he said, voice low, vibrating with condescension. "One primitive, insignificant ship to answer for a skirmish we barely even noticed. Pathetic, futile. Do we even need to waste our time?" Councillor Elena of the Andari, her crystalline body refracting the light in fractured rainbows, tilted her head. "The humans? They are charmingly Na'vi. Their technology is quaint. Their fleets are scattered and minor. One ship against the combined fleets of this council. Laughable." The murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. Councillors tapped at their consoles, checking their records, comparing centuries of military engagements, trade disputes, and minor conflicts involving humans. They had all come to the same conclusion: the humans were irrelevant. And then the communications panel flickered to life. The human ship arrived. At first, it seemed almost modest against the backdrop of the Council's armada. The Aurora's edge glided into orbit, unassuming, sleek, small compared to the massive Council warships, yet undeniably present. There were no fanfares, no displays of aggression. Its hull was simple, utilitarian, a vessel built for function, precision, and endurance rather than for spectacle. The human captain emerged from the hatch. He did not bow, did not kneel, did not offer excuses. He was tall, composed, exuding a calm that immediately drew attention. "I am Captain Elias Trask of the Aurora's Edge," he said, voice carrying across the chamber, steady and unflinching. "You convene to judge us, to threaten, to warn. I am here to demonstrate that assumptions have consequences, and yours will be obvious before this day ends." For a moment, there was silence. The council had expected negotiation, perhaps protests, perhaps the usual formal apologies from a species they considered unrefined. They had not expected confidence. They had not expected clarity. They had certainly not expected authority. The chamber erupted in laughter. Counselor Threx's mandibles clicked. Did he just speak to us without fear? A single ship, this primitive human dares speak with authority. Counselor, Eilena's voice rang out, sharp and incredulous. One vessel cannot face the council. They must be jesting. Surely this is a performance. But Trask did not flinch. He remained composed, scanning the room with eyes that weighed centuries of arrogance in an instant. His calm certainty was unsettling. It spread like a ripple, and even the counselors who had laughed could not shake a sense of unease. There was something deliberate, precise, and unnervingly confident about the human before them. Do you intend to threaten us? Counselor Threx asked, narrowing his eyes. Your species is tiny, your fleet scattered, and your technology primitive compared to our combined forces. What authority do you believe you have here? Trask's lips curved slightly, but not in humor. Authority is not claimed by size, strength, or the ability to fire indiscriminately. Authority comes from preparation, understanding, and the willingness to act when the moment demands it. You assumed our silence was weakness. You assumed patience was inaction. And that assumption will cost you. A murmur of disbelief passed through the chamber. They had dismissed humans for centuries. They had catalogued them, mocked them, written them off as inconsequential. They had assumed that even if humans survived, they would never pose a threat to the council. Yet here he stood, a single human against thousands of representatives from 1,000 worlds, speaking with calm certainty that suggested an unseen depth of strategy, patience, and capability. Counselor Vorash of the Sarkhan hissed, "Enough rhetoric. This is preposterous. One ship cannot." Before he could finish, the chamber's holoscreens flickered to life, projecting live views of the orbit surrounding Valar Prime. The Aurora's edge began maneuvering in ways that defied expectations. It slipped through council patrols with impossible precision, engines leaving no signature, shields appearing briefly only to vanish again. Observers saw only a small silhouette moving confidently through a sea of massive warships. The counselors leaned forward, eyes widening. The humans had arrived quietly, but not unprepared. Their ship's movement suggested intelligence, foresight, and awareness that no one could yet understand. Trask's calm voice cut through the murmurs again. You have observed us for centuries. You have catalogued our actions. You have written us off as insignificant. And yet, here I am, demonstrating that one ship, guided by understanding and precision, can confront the greatest authority in the galaxy. You will see, before this day ends, that underestimating humanity carries consequences you cannot escape. A strange silence fell over the chamber. Laughter had vanished. Whispers of doubt replaced certainty. Every counselor, from the most arrogant to the most cautious, realized for the first time that perhaps they had miscalculated. The humans had been quiet for centuries. They had seemed inconsequential, passive, even quaint. But silence, as the council would soon discover, had never been weakness. Patience had never been inaction. And one small ship against the might of the council had arrived not merely to answer questions, it had arrived to demonstrate that the galaxy's assumptions, its arrogance, and its dismissals were fundamentally flawed. And in that moment, as the Aurora's edge glided effortlessly in orbit, and Captain Trask stood calm before 1,000 of the galaxy's most powerful beings, the first tremors of fear began to ripple through the council. They assumed weakness. They were wrong. The Aurora's edge hovered at the edge of the Council's orbital perimeter, a solitary silhouette against the gleaming rings of Valar Prime. From the chamber, the Council watched the small ship begin its first maneuvers, and initially, many thought it an exercise in futility. One human vessel against the might of the Council, 1,000 eyes of varying species, from crystalline Andari to massive Vorthali, tracked its movements, brimming with curiosity, amusement, and condescension. Then, the unthinkable happened. A Vorthali blockade cruiser, one of the largest in their fleet, moved to intercept the Aurora's edge. It activated its weapon arrays, bristling with energy cannons that could vaporize planets if fired indiscriminately. Its engines roared with a sound that vibrated through the orbital platform, signaling the beginning of what the Council assumed would be a brief, humiliating encounter. The human ship responded, not with weapons, not with force, but with flawless movement. The Aurora's edge twisted, accelerated, and bent its trajectory in ways that seemed to defy conventional physics. It slipped past the cruiser's shields, leaving energy pulses in its wake, but no impact. Then, without firing a single shot, the cruiser's engines flickered, its systems destabilized, and the massive warship drifted powerless, utterly immobilized. A murmur of astonishment swept through the Council. "Impossible," hissed Councillor Threx of the Vorthali, his claws tightening around the armrest of his chair. "A single vessel, one human how?" The Andari High Chancellor, her crystalline form shimmering with tension, whispered they anticipated every maneuver. Every thrust, every evasive action predicted. "They've studied us. They've studied everything." Captain Trask's voice cut through the murmurs, calm, deliberate, and commanding. "You believe that numbers, size, and firepower define strength. You assume patience is weakness, but you forget that understanding, adaptation, and precise action carry a power you have never measured. From the holofeed, the Council could see the human ship darting effortlessly between formations. Energy arrays designed to trap or disable intruders failed to detect the Aurora's edge until it had already disabled vital systems, leaving fleets stunned and inert. Councillor Eilena's fractal limbs trembled. They are too small, too few. How can this one ship, this vessel, stop fleets that number in the hundreds? The answer was evident in real time. One human ship, piloted by a crew with decades of tactical observation, was dismantling fleets without destruction, without reckless firepower, and without loss. It was surgical, precise, and terrifying. It struck at weaknesses the Council had long assumed were hidden, exploiting flaws in formation, timing, and technology with an elegance that made destruction seem almost effortless. Even the Sarkhan Admiral Vorash, known for cunning and adaptability, felt the weight of incredulity. Every strategy we've rehearsed for centuries, nullified. Every formation, every contingency anticipated and countered. This is beyond comprehension. Yet the Aurora's edge remained calm, moving not to conquer, not to annihilate, but to demonstrate a principle. One human ship, guided by intelligence and preparation, could confront an empire. Every maneuver was calculated, every action deliberate. It was a demonstration of inevitability, not chaos. Councillor Threx roared in frustration. They cannot possibly continue this. One vessel against our combined fleets, our largest ships how? The holofeed showed another example. An Andari strike frigate attempted to flank the human ship. It fired, unleashing a barrage of energy beams intended to destroy or disable. The Aurora's edge responded instantly, weaving through the beams with impossible grace, then emitting a localized pulse that disrupted the frigate's engines without collapsing its hull. The crew remained unharmed, the ship unscathed, yet it was paralyzed, unable to move, a silent testament to the human crew's skill. The counselors began to whisper among themselves, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and awe. "They've studied every tactic, every maneuver," said one. "They know what we'll do before we do it." "They are inevitable," muttered another, voice barely audible. Trask spoke again, the calm authority in his voice carrying across the chamber. "I do not seek your destruction. I seek to demonstrate a truth you have long ignored. Humanity is not defined by size, by numbers, or by firepower. We endure, we observe, we adapt, and when the time comes, we act with precision that ensures the outcome is inevitable." Outside, the Aurora's Edge continued its calculated campaign. Another Vortali dreadnought tried to intercept, only to find itself immobilized before it could complete its first attack run. Andari and Sarkhan ships, confident in their technology and experience, were disabled in ways that were elegant, surgical, and devastating in effect. No explosions, no fires, no chaos, just quiet, undeniable control. Even minor species ships, watching from the sidelines, understood the lesson being taught. Humanity had weaponized patience, intelligence, and observation. They had transformed centuries of dismissal into a single, concentrated force. One ship, one crew, guided by ingenuity and adaptability, was rewriting the rules of engagement. Counselor Eilina, voice trembling, asked, "Do they understand the full scale of the Council? The power arrayed against them?" Trask's calm voice echoed across all channels. "I understand every power here, every strategy, every arrogance, and I have acted accordingly. The result you witness is not a fluke. It is inevitability." The Council's plenary chamber fell silent. The arrogance of centuries, the assumption of human weakness, and the belief in their own invincibility had been confronted by a single, deliberate act of mastery. One human ship was not merely engaging a fleet, it was exposing the futility of arrogance, the fragility of assumptions, and the danger of underestimating patience guided by intelligence. By the time the first hour of the engagement ended, fleets that had once laughed at humanity now drifted helpless in orbit. Counselors, previously confident, now stared in stunned silence. The lesson was unmistakable. The humans had arrived, not to beg, not to plead, not to conquer indiscriminately, but to demonstrate a truth the galaxy had refused to acknowledge. Patience, observation, and intelligence could outmatch any fleet, any empire. One human ship was enough to prove that centuries of underestimation came at a cost no empire could afford to ignore. And as the Aurora's Edge prepared for its next maneuver, the Council finally understood humanity had never been weak. Humanity had merely waited. And when humanity acted, the result was inevitable. The Aurora's Edge moved through the Council's orbital perimeter with an almost imperceptible grace, a single vessel navigating a sea of warships bristling with energy cannons, shields, and automated interceptors. To the Council, it seemed impossible. One human ship could not possibly challenge their combined fleets, could not possibly disrupt centuries of military and political dominance, could not possibly survive even a single volley of coordinated fire. Yet it did. Counselor Threx of the Vortali leaned heavily against his console, claws tapping nervously. They predicted every move. Everyone. Every maneuver we attempted has been counted before it even begins. His voice trembled as he watched the live feeds. Ships that were supposed to be invulnerable, hulking dreadnoughts and command vessels, were disabled with precision that mocked their armor. No explosions. No fires. No destruction beyond the systems that needed disabling. The Andari High Chancellor shimmered, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into fractured rainbows. They do not attack blindly. They do not waste energy. They are intelligent, calculating, adaptive. One thought. Captain Trask's calm voice resonated across communications channels, precise and unflinching. You believe numbers define power. You believe size determines strength. You assume patience is weakness. You are wrong. Intelligence, foresight, and adaptability are far more potent than arrogance, firepower, or history. One vessel, with one crew committed to excellence, can render fleets ineffective without loss of life, without chaos, without destruction. That is the nature of inevitability. The holofeed displayed the human ship weaving between Vortali squadrons, its movement seemingly anticipating every evasive maneuver. Energy pulses flickered, shields engaged, and then failed. Systems fell offline, and entire sections of warships drifted, immobilized, and confused. The Council had long prided themselves on superior tactics, multi-layered formations, and contingency strategies developed over centuries. All of it failed against a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Even the Sarkhan Admiral Vorash, a veteran of countless campaigns, found himself speechless. They know everything we will do before we do it. Every formation, every tactic, every contingency anticipated. It is impossible. And yet, here we are. The Aurora's edge moved methodically, disabling one fleet after another, each strike measured, precise, and devastating in its effect, not by destruction, but by control. The humans had weaponized patience, intelligence, and observation. Their silence had been preparation. Their quiet endurance had been strategy. And now, their first act of engagement had become a lesson the galaxy would never forget. Counselor Yaelina of the Andari whispered, almost to herself, "We dismissed them for centuries. We mocked their quiet. We assumed patience was weakness. And yet here they are, orchestrating our defeat with one ship, one crew, one mind. One vessel is all it takes to unravel centuries of pride and power." The minor species in the chamber leaned forward, eyes wide, absorbing the lesson with a mix of awe and fear. Ships that had once been considered primitive were demonstrating control, precision, and foresight far beyond what the galaxy had considered possible. This was not brute force. This was not luck. This was human ingenuity at its pinnacle. Captain Trask communicated again, calm and deliberate. "I do not seek to annihilate your fleets. I do not seek to humiliate your species. I act to demonstrate a principle. Assumptions have consequences. Arrogance has costs. Underestimating a species that observes, endures, and adapts will always lead to failure. And now you witness the consequences of your misjudgment." In the orbital chamber, counselors could feel it a shift, subtle at first. Then, undul, the arrogance that had guided their governance, the certainty in their superiority, The assumption of humanity's weakness, all of it was crumbling under the weight of truth. Humanity was not merely surviving. Humanity was dominating in a way the Council could not comprehend, and each moment of observation revealed a deeper mastery. The Vortali fleets, once confident, began to hesitate, their formations unraveling as the Aurora's edge struck again. Andari squadrons faltered, unsure whether to attack, retreat, or simply observe. The Sarkhan, known for adaptability and cunning, recalculated constantly, yet found that every adjustment the humans had anticipated, countered, and neutralized. A whisper spread through the chamber, impossible to suppress. They are inevitable. It was more than a statement of fact. It was a recognition, a fear, a reluctant awe. One human ship, operating with intelligence, patience, and precision, had exposed the fragility of centuries of pride. The galaxy, so certain of its own superiority, was confronted with the undeniable truth. Humans could not be dismissed, underestimated, or ignored. Even as the Council scrambled to coordinate a counterattack, Captain Trask's calm, commanding voice reminded them of the lesson they had already begun to understand. We are not the largest. We are not the loudest. But one species, patient, observant, and precise, can confront the greatest powers and make the inevitable undeniable. Your fleets, your strategies, your pride, they were tested. The result is clear. You underestimated humanity, and now you witness the consequences. Outside the chamber, the Aurora's edge executed another flawless maneuver. A Vortali dreadnought attempted to flank it, energy beams firing in rapid succession. The human ship dodged, evaded, and then emitted a localized pulse that immobilized the dreadnought without a single casualty or structural collapse. Another squadron attempted to intercept it too, faltered. Systems failed. Engines stalled. The humans had demonstrated that size, numbers, and firepower were meaningless when confronted with intelligence, foresight, and adaptability. The Council finally understood. This was not a demonstration of chaos or violence. It was a demonstration of inevitability. Humanity's patience, endurance, and preparation had created a force that no empire, no fleet, and no combination of strategies could ignore. Captain Trask did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He simply communicated across the chamber, "You now understand." One vessel, guided by human ingenuity, patience, and resolve, can render fleets ineffective. Arrogance has limits. Underestimation has costs. Humanity has endured centuries of dismissal, and now our actions ensure that the consequences are evident. The result of underestimating us is inevitable. The Council fell silent, the lessons settling into every mind present. The humans had revealed the truth. Their silence had never been weakness. Their patience had never been submission. And one small ship could accomplish what centuries of empire and pride could not. And as the Aurora's edge prepared for its next maneuvers, the Council finally, fully, comprehended the scale of what they faced. Humanity had arrived, not recklessly, not violently, but with inevitable precision. One human ship against the Council had demonstrated the ultimate truth. The galaxy had misjudged the quietest, smallest species in the universe. And the result of that misjudgment would echo for generations. By the time the Aurora's edge had completed its first hour of engagement, the full scale of human capability was no longer speculation. It was undeniable reality. The Council's fleets, once symbols of absolute authority and galactic dominance, were paralyzed, scattered, and confused. Ships that had withstood orbital bombardments, black hole-grade energy arrays, and interstellar skirmishes now drifted like empty shells, their engines offline, their weapons systems locked, their commanders scrambling for solutions that did not exist. Counselor Thrax of the Vortali pounded his claws against the console, each strike echoing through the chamber as if attempting to claw reality itself into submission. This cannot be happening. One vessel, one human vessel, cannot possibly neutralize the fleets of the Council. It is impossible. Every strategy we have refined over centuries, nullified in minutes. The Andari High Chancellor, normally composed and radiant, leaned forward, fractal limbs trembling. They anticipated every contingency, every attack, every evasive move, every formation we attempted. They predicted it. Every human system on that ship is a masterwork of foresight. It is terrifying. Outside the chamber, the holofeed displayed the continuing assault. Another Vortali cruiser attempted to flank the Aurora's edge, unleashing volleys of energy blasts designed to overwhelm the human ship. The Aurora's edge twisted, accelerated, and slipped between them effortlessly. Then, without firing a shot, a precise electronic pulse surged from the human vessel, disabling the cruiser's engines and navigation systems. It drifted, immobilized, harmless yet completely neutralized. Counselor Helena of the Andari gasped, voice trembling. They don't attack blindly. They don't expend energy unnecessarily. They are surgical, elegant, precise. And they understand everything we are attempting before we even attempt it. Admiral Varash of the Sarkhan, the most cunning strategist in the Council, bared his fangs in disbelief. I have faced fleets 10 times our size. I have adapted to ambushes, countered superior technology, and outmaneuvered entire planetary defense grids. And still, I cannot counter one human ship. One ship, one crew it is beyond comprehension. The Aurora's edge did not slow. Every strike, every maneuver was deliberate. Fleets that had trained for centuries, fleets that had crushed resistance across star systems, were rendered impotent. The humans were not merely fighting. They were orchestrating a demonstration of inevitability, of precision, of strategy that transcended brute force. Trask's voice, calm and resonant, echoed across the chamber and fleet comms. You assumed arrogance, numbers, and firepower would define superiority. You assumed patience was weakness. You assumed humans were insignificant. You were wrong. One vessel, guided by intelligence, foresight, and adaptability, can render the greatest fleets in the galaxy ineffective. And that is the lesson of inevitability. Another Andari squadron attempted to regroup, energy beams firing in synchronized volleys, but the humans were always one step ahead. They did not attack recklessly. They did not destroy unnecessarily. They disrupted systems, disabled weapons, immobilized engines, and left crews unharmed, leaving the Council fleets bewildered, humiliated, and powerless. The murmurs in the Council chamber had grown louder, but now they carried awe and fear. They have studied us, one whispered. They know every tactic we've ever used. Every maneuver, every contingency anticipated. They are inevitable, another replied, the words a mixture of shock and reluctant respect. The Aurora's edge advanced further into the Council's formations. Even the Vortali dreadnoughts, massive and supposedly indestructible, faltered under the human ship's precision strikes. Engines sputtered. weapons jammed. Navigation arrays flickered, leaving these once proud vessels inert. The Andari, whose fleets were famed for speed and coordination, found their squadrons frozen mid-flight, systems overridden, movement paralyzed by the humans' ingenuity. Captain Trask's calm voice returned. "I do not seek to conquer, nor do I wish to destroy indiscriminately. I am here to demonstrate the cost of arrogance. I am here to show the galaxy what happens when a species assumes patience and intelligence are weaknesses. You are witnessing the results of centuries of observation, preparation, and adaptability. One ship, one crew, can achieve what empires cannot because they understand inevitability." In the chamber, counselors began to glance at one another, the first signs of humility and fear threading through their once unshakable confidence. Strategies long assumed infallible were undone, formations dismantled before they could even take shape. The galaxy's greatest fleets were no longer symbols of power. They were examples of hubris, exposed by a species long underestimated. Even minor species, previously confident in their alliances and the strength of the Council, leaned forward, witnessing a demonstration they would never forget. Humanity had transformed patience into strategy, endurance into leverage, and quiet observation into decisive, unavoidable force. The lesson was clear. Underestimating humans carried consequences no empire could endure. The holofeed showed the human ship maneuvering through the final sector of the Council's orbital perimeter. Every fleet that had opposed it was now neutralized, immobilized, or otherwise rendered ineffective. Ships drifted silently in space, systems locked, weapons offline, command crews bewildered. The galaxy had just witnessed the execution of an intelligence far surpassing brute force, an orchestration of inevitability that no counselor had imagined possible. Captain Trask's final message, broadcast to every fleet, every council chamber, and every listening world in the system, carried a calm, commanding weight. You assumed size, power, and pride would protect you. You assumed patience and quietude were weakness. You assumed humans were irrelevant. You were wrong. One vessel, guided by observation, intelligence, and precision. This is the result of underestimating humanity. This is inevitability. Silence fell across the chamber. No one spoke. The Council's arrogance had been shattered. The galaxy's pride had been humbled. Fleets that had once commanded respect now floated helpless, their capabilities neutralized without loss of life, without chaos, without destruction, simply through understanding and execution beyond comprehension. And as the Aurora's edge glided silently toward the final positions in orbit, the Council, the fleets, and even the most confident observers understood what had become undeniable. Humanity had arrived. Not recklessly, not with brute force, not with arrogance, but with inevitability. The galaxy would never again underestimate humans, and the Council would never forget the day when one human ship, against overwhelming power, demonstrated that underestimation comes with a price that cannot be avoided. For the humans, the battle was not about conquest, it was about revealing truth. One ship had faced the Council, and the outcome, perfectly orchestrated, was now inevitable. And every empire, every fleet, every civilization in the galaxy would tremble at the realization. The Aurora's edge floated silently above Vela Prime, its sleek hull reflecting the glittering rings below. The ship, unscathed and unflinching, had completed what no one in the Council had deemed possible. Armadas, that had once dominated sectors now drifted immobilized, weapons offline, engines dead, formations dismantled without a single catastrophic explosion. The galaxy's most powerful fleets had been neutralized, and yet, remarkably, no lives had been lost. Humanity's strategy had been surgical, precise, and merciless in its efficiency. Captain Elias Trask stood calmly on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the holoscreens displaying the Council fleet's current positions. His expression was serene, almost gentle, but there was a weight to it, a quiet authority that carried across the void of space, across the communication channels, and into every Council chamber, every fleet that had borne witness. The Council had gathered once more, in their plenary chamber, their once proud posture replaced by tension, disbelief, and awe. Councillor Threx of the Vortali's massive claws clenched involuntarily, his mandibles clicking in frustration and astonishment. How is it possible that one vessel, one human vessel, has dismantled centuries of coordinated strategy? Our fleets, our strongest ships, our finest commanders, reduced to helplessness by a single craft? It is inconceivable. Councillor Eilina of the Andari, her crystalline form trembling faintly, whispered, "It is not inconceivable. It is inevitable. Every move, every counter, every strategy we attempted, anticipated, neutralized, perfected. They understand us in ways we do not understand ourselves." A ripple of fear and grudging admiration spread across the chamber. Even the minor species, who had often considered themselves observers to the Council's power, now recognized the unprecedented scale of what they had witnessed. The humans had not fought recklessly, nor had they relied solely on brute force. They had weaponized patience, intelligence, and meticulous observation to achieve an outcome that now defined the word inevitability. Trask's voice resonated across all channels, calm yet resolute. "I do not seek to humiliate, nor to conquer. I do not seek to destroy without reason. I am here to demonstrate a principle. One species, patient, observant, and precise, can confront overwhelming power and emerge victorious. You assumed our silence was weakness, our endurance was submission, our patience was ignorance. You were wrong. One ship, guided by intelligence and resolve, is sufficient to show that underestimating humanity has consequences you cannot evade." Across the galaxy, observers recorded, transmitted, and replayed the engagement. Fleets that had once mocked human technology were now witnessing their own vulnerability. Worlds that had believed themselves safe under the Council's protection trembled at the revelation. Humans were not to be dismissed, underestimated, or ignored. Even the councillors who prided themselves on centuries of wisdom and experience struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the lesson. Admiral Vorash of the Sarkhan, whose reputation for cunning and strategy had never been questioned, whispered to no one in particular, "One vessel, one crew, one mind." And yet, the result is absolute. I cannot deny it. We were wrong. The holofeed showed the Aurora's edge drifting toward its docking position, engines purring silently, systems optimal. No celebration. No display of dominance, no arrogance. Captain Trask understood that the battle's purpose had not been destruction, it had been revelation. Humanity's capability, patience, and ingenuity had been proven in the most undeniable way possible, by demonstrating that one species could make the unimaginable inevitable. The Council's plenary chamber remained in stunned silence. Every member understood the cost of underestimation. They had dismissed humanity, cataloged them as minor, insignificant, and inconsequential. They had assumed centuries of silence equated to weakness. They had assumed patience and endurance were traits of submission. And now, the consequences were clear. Trask's voice carried a final message, calm, authoritative, and timeless. You now understand that the measure of a species is not in size, firepower, or arrogance. It is in intelligence, in foresight, in adaptability, and in the patience to act when the moment demands. One ship is sufficient to demonstrate what centuries of underestimation cannot. Humanity's silence has never been weakness, and our patience has never been submission. This is the result of ignoring the truth. When humans act, the outcome is inevitable. Counselor Thrax, his mandibles trembling, finally spoke, voice raw with a mixture of awe, fear, and humility. We believed ourselves invincible. We assumed arrogance and history protected us. We misjudged a species we deemed insignificant. The lesson is seared into our fleets, our minds, our very perception of the galaxy. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is inevitable. Across the galaxy, the message reverberated. Fleets transmitted reports of the engagement, systems recorded and archived every maneuver, every decision, every strike. Civilizations that had never interacted with humans now reevaluated centuries of assumptions, understanding that the quiet, unassuming species had always been underestimated. The Aurora's Edge docked silently at the orbital station. Captain Trask emerged, still calm, still collected. He surveyed the humbled council and the immobilized fleets with quiet authority. No words of triumph were necessary. The humans had demonstrated the truth. No one in the galaxy would ever underestimate them again. One ship against the council had proven what centuries of observation had prepared it to prove. Arrogance could not withstand intelligence. Patience could not be mistaken for submission, and underestimation carried consequences so absolute that the council itself trembled. Captain Trask's final gesture was simple. He raised a hand in acknowledgement of the council, not in arrogance, but in clarity. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy had seen it. And the result, inevitable, undeniable, and permanent, was now embedded in the memory of every civilization that had witnessed it. The Aurora's Edge moved into the void once more, leaving the Council and the galaxy to reflect, rebuild, and adapt. Humanity had demonstrated not only capability, but principle. The smallest, quietest, or seemingly insignificant force, when guided by patience, intelligence, and resolve, could challenge the greatest empires. And as the ship disappeared into the vastness of space, one truth became crystal clear. Never underestimate humans. Never dismiss them. Never assume that patience and observation are weakness. For when humanity acts, the result is not just victory. The result is inevitable, and the galaxy would never forget.